There is so much controversy in the field of science about where the origin of life began. Creationists and evolutionists both claim to have the answers on how life on Earth originated. Does it really matter where life originated? In this video, I will compare and contrast beliefs between creationists and evolutionary perspectives, and finally address the question of what are the ethical implications of holding a creationist versus an evolutionary view. The core idea of modern evolution theory is that all life is descended from a common ancestor. The theory garners much scrutiny and skepticism. However, it can be explained in part through the simple mechanism of natural selection. Natural selection takes advantage of the variability that exists within the genome. Random mutations that occur in the genome are behind these variations and sometimes change the fitness of an organism. Natural selection dictates that those with higher fitness survive and reproduce. Thus, certain traits are selected for within the species. This process suggests how gradual change occurs and how complex organisms arise from simplistic ancestors. When we look back at atheist regimes in the 20th century, these are real-life examples of people who carried out concepts from the evolutionary theory. Evolution has been used as a basis for society in Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler sought to make the practice of Germany conform to the theory of evolution. He was responsible for the deaths of at least 17 million people. He carried out the concept of eugenics to usher in a new utopia. Joseph Stalin is responsible for the death of 23 million people. Mao Zedong is responsible for the deaths of at least 78 million people. This is genocidal mass murder. Each of these regimes had one thing in common. That was the belief in evolution. It caused them to view human life as nothing more than animals, even possibly lower than them. Evolution accepts that death and suffering are a part of what makes us human. Adolf Hitler stated, "He who does not want to fight in this world where the eternal struggle is the law of life has no right to exist." Evolution doesn't leave any room for comfort from suffering. It contributes to the struggle for existence. The creationist worldview is based on God being the creator of planet Earth and all life forms. Theology and science contribute to a creationist's understanding of reality. The creationist perspective is theocentric. God generates the intrinsic value of nature. From a theological perspective, the further one moves away from God and fully rejects his moral law, the less human one will become. A theocentric perspective suggests relationship with others demand all individuals should be affirmed regardless of abilities and should be treated with dignity and care because they are created in the image of God, and because man alone was created in the image of God, there is a distinction. The Judeo-Christian holds a sanctity for human life. There is a higher morality than national law, and it isn't confined to human rules. The Sermon on the Mount is a concentration of Christian ethics at its core. It has also been referred to as the Beatitudes. A common underlying theme is for one to love the enemy up to the point of non-resistance, which is exemplified in Christ's sacrifice for humanity on the cross. The Sermon on the Mount portrays a new relationship with God that will in turn influence the way humans will interact with each other. Turning the other cheek is not just meant in the literal sense, It's more along the lines of turning away from the way you would normally think and live. The key theme of the sermon's depiction of the kingdom is an imitation of God. One should seek to deal relationally with others the way God would, to act as God does. With forgiveness and mercy is to live in the kingdom. One controversy between creationists and evolutionists is that creationists use faith and religion as a crutch to fill in the parts that are lacking in evidence, as opposed to science solely being based on evidence. Some see faith as a leap in the dark. However, a creationist's faith includes confidence in unobservable events from the past and a future life eternal. Evolutionists are also subject to use faith when there is a lack of evidence from science. When no hard evidence exists for events that were so far in the past, science has serious handicaps. But a person may still choose to assume that life originated through naturalistic processes and then intentionally use the scientific method to determine the most likely process by which that event may have happened. The effort so far has failed. Scientists are not able to replicate the process of abiogenesis. But is it worth another try? If that person is honest about the philosophical choice being made, they will defend his or her right to follow that approach, even though they are convinced that that effort will not succeed. Therefore, both theories require faith in order for the science to back it up. Science can't test either of these hypotheses. 1. An intervening God has been active in the history of origins, or 2. No intervening God has been active in history. The choice between these hypotheses is a philosophical or religious choice, not a scientific choice. If evolution is true, then it means we're created. If biblical creation is true, it makes us accountable to the God of the Bible. Science does not explain whether something is right or wrong. It doesn't teach morality. It is intrinsically placed in us humans by God. If we're accountable to a creator, he has the right to create rules for us. If we were made from chance, there is no basis to base our morality. We cannot fully base our understanding of human nature on science. Naturalism cannot fully explain human nature and what differentiates us from other species. Psychology and sociology cannot be reduced to natural science, nor can philosophy and theology be discarded as providing no independent insights about human identity. This does not mean that natural science does not give us precious information about who we are and where we come from. But we cannot expect to know everything which is worth knowing about humans from this one source. And when it comes to the evolutionary perspective versus the creationist perspective, we can infer from the evidence presented that the negative ethical implications are greater with an evolutionary worldview. From both the evolutionary perspective and the creationist perspective, integration and a combination of faith and science worked hand in hand. However, a creationist faith is more substantial and has more credibility because it's based on biblical evidence as opposed to assumptions on man-made theories.